Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. With a new Superman movie soon upon us, I thought I should take a look at a story about the last son of Krypton, particularly one said to have influenced James Gunn's take. While there are apparently several comics that the film draws on, I'm taking issue with Superman for All Seasons, a 4-part story that doesn't so much retell, reboot, or reinvent the Blue Boy Scout, but more looks at an earlier period in his life and how certain events shaped him. Let's begin with Book 1, Spring, and see if these comics make us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover has our hero flying away from the Kent farm, with a fairly stern look on his face. He's a little upset because Ma said he couldn't have any dessert until he finished his vegetables, and apologized to Aquaman for calling him Mr. Fishy. Brought to us by the team of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, with colors by Bjarne Hansen, we begin with close-ups of the iconic S, alongside Jonathan Kent's narration, quoting the opening from the Max Fleischer cartoons, and how famous the Man of Steel has become. Yet at a time he was simply his son, Clark Kent, whom he inexplicably found in a crashed rocket ship. We go to Smallville when Clark was in his late teens, and his pa was struggling with a large rock in the field. Ben Grimm's been laying eggs on people's property again. As the young man approaches, waiting patiently, narration notes how Martha's stubbornness led them to take this foundling in as their own. Wonderful woman. Marry her all over again tomorrow if that's what she wanted. Second bachelor party, woo! After a moment's waiting, Clark asks if he can help with the stone, eschewing his dad's prying tool and lifting it out of the ground with ease, asking where to put it. You could chuck it at the Tanner farm. Pa! He got that blue ribbon because he fed his cow growth hormones, and we all know it. Jonathan gives a look, not of disappointment or anger, but perhaps incredulousness, as he tells a confused Clark that, like he had mentioned earlier, Ma wants them back inside for supper. They've invited Lana Lang and her Aunt Ruth over, and Clark feeding the family dog Shelby on the sly. It's just great. After dinner, as he walks her to her aunt's car, Lana asks if anything was wrong, since Clark was so quiet, but he assures that if there was a problem, he'd tell her. Who else would he tell? John's narration mentions how he'd plowed that field for years, only to hit a rock he'd never encountered prior, perhaps symbolic of the changes his son is currently going through, and how soon it seems that the parents are going to have to face how different he is. On their porch swing, he tells Martha he doesn't regret telling the boy about the rocket, but with his abilities seeming to have no limits, there's a lot they don't know, and he's unsure how to deal with it. Ma says they raised the lad right, and her husband should have more faith, and worries that Clark can hear them. Pa figures he's asleep in his bedroom on the other side of the house, but he's only half right, with their boy lying awake next to their dog. And sure, maybe that expression on his face is a bit forlorn, but my question is, if it's May like this calendar says, why is the girl in the picture wearing a Santa hat? Is Mrs. Claus a pinup model 11 months out of the year? Jonathan reckons Clark was lucky to be raised in Smallville, lest he grow too quickly, unable to support his own weight and turn sour. You know, like corn. One day he'd gone to the general store with Lana and Pete Ross, the latter of whom was quite eager to ditch Smallville after they graduate in a few months, and head to Metropolis in hopes of getting rich. As a kind of good luck ritual, he rubs an elephant head on the counter, wishing for $1 million, saying he wouldn't give his riches away like Lex Luthor. Sadly, nobody told Pete that money gained through wishes are not tax-exempt. Clark knew everybody in the store, and they knew him. That's just the kind of town they live in, including several blue-collar workers thinking that him sitting next to the redhead was quite similar to when the Kents sat there years back. Lana asks Clark if he thinks there really is a Lex Luthor, or if he's a fabrication of the newspapers. And that's when Clark remembers he's supposed to get a haircut. Really, he just doesn't want to get into another political debate. He stands firm on his belief that Lex Luthor is really just swamp gas. Bald swamp gas. He hops next door to the barber shop, fashionably late, and takes a seat while Mr. Wilson finishes giving a shave to the police chief. Maybe the proximity of that razor blade to his face will encourage him to do something about that pesky Dennis Mitchell kid that's always bothering him. This is when Clark's X-ray vision kicks in, and his hearing picked up his friends talking about him, acting weird and living in his own little world. He's so mesmerized it does seem like this is the first time it's happened. This is probably the same day his invulnerability kicked up a notch, because his usual little off the top breaks the barber's scissors. Switching from Head and Shoulders to the generic store brand really did wonders. Clark nervously excuses himself and takes off, with Jonathan narrating how Sam Wilson, yeah, same name as the Falcon, tended to make other people's business his own, while Chief Parker was one to let people go about their business. But I bet he'd feel differently if he saw the Kent boy race past a train and cut it off like this. Seems like he should at least get a ticket. Instead, he just ends up standing in the middle of the field for a while, alone. Well, alone with the dog. Until his pa approaches and Clark admits he's scared of what's happening to him. John narrates reflectively on Clark's youth, standing in his crib smiling with pride, sometime later talking to the dog or to ants, or the porch swing, and all in all, he just thought of him as a normal kid. In this moment, though, he wanted to say that all life's answers could be found in Smallville, but instead tells the boy who could bend steel that he and his mom will always love him. Even after Quest for Peace? Even after Dawn of Justice? Mostly. Huh? Nothing? As predicted a few pages back by handyman Tom Landers, a storm starts brewing sometime later. John's narration muses that Mother Nature finds a way to balance things out for humans sowing the fields and reaping the bounty of that growth, which in this case has taken the form of a tornado. Would the Pa Kent of Man of Steel deciding to sacrifice himself to nature in return for their years of harvest be less stupid than the reason they gave in the movie? Clark gets swept up in the storm, calling for his dad, before realizing he may have this handled. He spots gas station owner Morris Klug standing in a puddle of still spilling gasoline, and dives in to grab him and act as a human, Kryptonian shield just before the place explodes, assuring him they'll be all right. The storm passes, the town is demolished, and Morris could have sworn he saw the kid flying, but figures the Twister must have carried him, and that's when Clark says he needs to get home. I have to check on my Star Trek memorabilia, and my dog! Oh, and my parents. They made it to the cellar safe and sound, and the Kents all group hug, happy to be together again. The next day, as Clark pulls the tractor from the barn's roof, he mentions he could have done more, with a kind of haunted look in his eye. He goes to the church, where the community is working to rebuild its damage, to talk with Pastor Lindquist. After the tornado, and with graduation coming up and not knowing where to go, everything has him confused, and he wonders what if someone had the power to stop all the devastation, but didn't. Even when told that no man can change the path set by the Almighty, the young man is still curious if such a person did exist. The chat is interrupted by the pastor needing to supervise the reconstruction, and Clark lets him go, saying he'll be fine. Guess I'll go see what Rabbi Birnbaum has to say. I mean, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel were both Jewish, so it kind of makes sense. Spring came to a close, graduation day arrived, and so too the subsequent party at the Kent place. Martha bought Clark a new suit, suitcases were taken from the attic, and his time with them felt all too short as he prepared to leave home. As night began to fall, he took Lana out to the field, and decided to be a little more impulsive than usual. I'm gonna have a second helping of graduation cake! Taking her hand, he begins lifting them both into the air, showing off his ability to fly. She's scared, but he asks her to trust him. Not like she has much choice this far up, now does she?
Remember, it's not the fall, it's the sudden stop.
When they land, he says he doesn't know why or how he has these special gifts, but does know he wants to use them to help as many people as possible. Which, Lana realizes, means he'll have to leave Smallville, but he does promise to come back. It might be a while, though. You know, after I've gotten married, had a couple of kids. We'll probably move back once they're teenagers, and I interpret my mom's dying words as sage advice to return to my Kansas roots. But hey, if that happens, I bet you'll become mayor, too. She kisses him, which he seems mildly indifferent to. Maybe it's restrained surprise, but I'll get more into it in the eventual wrap-up. Sometime later, he's all packed and ready to go, sitting with Martha, who says he can do anything he sets his mind to and believes in with all his heart. He then goes to stand with his dad, still marveled by the sunset no matter how many times he's seen it. The Kents did their job and raised their boy right, and he was finally old enough to say goodbye. Clark, as we know, went on to Metropolis and became a reporter, and we see Perry White telling him, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen to give their readers what they want, More on the new hero in town. Clark tries asking Lois on a date, but she has plans with someone that, regardless of what Perry said, is still good for a story. Lex Luthor. Oh, come on, I thought Lane had better taste than to go out with swamp gas. Arriving at his building after their date, Lex invites her for a nightcap, but as lovely as the evening was, Lois has a deadline to meet, and he has a hat to catch after a strange blue and red blur knocks it off and musses up his receding hair. A child chases after his cat on the ledge of a very tall building when he slips, but is fortunately saved and placed back on the ledge.
Wow, cool costume!
Thanks. My mom made it for me. Not sure why she didn't give me any pockets, but she's in her mid-60s, what are you gonna do? After our first formal look at our hero in the story, we go to Luthor's penthouse, watching his destined nemesis fly past his window. As Pa Kent's narration mentions, he and Martha are like any parents, worrying about their kid eating right, making friends, staying safe, even if he is Superman. And a woman asks Lex if he'll be needing anything else. It's going to be a long, hot summer.
I'll cue up the Mungo Jerry, sir.
In the summertime, when the weather is hot, you can stretch right up and touch the sky.
That does it for the first chapter of the story, which was, appropriately, very down-to-earth. But how will Clark's transition to the big city fare now that he's mildly irritated the richest guy in town? Tune in next week as we get the perspective from another loved one in his life. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.